for us to start on time because I want to give as much time as we can to our guest facilitators and to our participants. So just a brief welcome. I'm Denise Stockley. I'm the president of the Society for Teaching and Learning in Higher Education, and we're absolutely delighted to have you all come. And just one Zoom tip, please mute if you're not talking at a particular point, as I will. And for those who've heard me say this before, if you hold the space bar down because you're typing to something else, you will unmute yourself. But absolutely welcome to our third Zoom. And I'm going to turn the floor to Erica Kustra, who is our chair of the Educational Developers Caucus.
So I'd like to extend my welcome to everyone coming from all over Canada, and I think even some other places. I'm the chair of the Educational Developers Caucus, and I'm director of the Center at the University of Windsor, and it's a real pleasure to welcome all of you, and I'm thrilled to be part of this webinar looking at wellness. So I'm going to turn it over to our Vice Chair Communications, Carolyn Hostler, who's going to give a little bit of an orientation to how the Zoom is working.
All right, so welcome everybody, and this is our third Zoom webinar, and we're excited to have our guest speakers, and I'll introduce them in a moment, but I'll do a bit of like that flight attendant tech thing. So basically, you will have access to the chat. In the chat, you'll see a link to the opening poll, and that will come up several times because as people join, they only see the chat where they join. So you'll see that poll go up a couple of times. That's why you see it there. In addition to that, we're asking that people mute themselves if they are in the conversation and they're not one of our wonderful presenters. You're welcome to have your video on, and we'll also be sharing a screen. If you're new to Zoom, what you want to make sure you do is you want to make sure that you have set it up so you can see. You will be moving to a breakout room later, at which point it will kind of feel like somebody just teleported you. So you will suddenly disappear from this space, you will suddenly appear in a new space, and you'll be having to reconnect any video or microphone when you move. In addition to that, in this space, you'll be able to see the slides. This is being recorded. The breakout rooms will not be recorded. If you have any other questions, please post them in the chat, and I will be helping with that in a few minutes. In addition to that, we have our opening poll. So we want to please click on that opening poll, and I will again share it into the chat, and you will start to see the responses. If you've been joining us for more than one of these sessions, you'll notice that the questions are slightly different to start. We have heard pretty much across the country, people have moved this semester's classes online. So the questions are asking still about whether the campus itself physically is still open, and also the status of spring and summer, and then the status of fall classes. And we're also looking at the role and the location. So if you can go into the opening poll and complete those responses, we'll have a sense of who's in the room.
Hey.
All right, so what we're seeing there is campuses being open. About 44% roughly have campus buildings access closed, emergency maintenance only. We're also seeing some that are encouraged to work from home, but not required. And we're having some that have access restricted. This may also be disciplinary based. So some sections of campus, such as health sciences, are often more on the restricted rather than the fully closed at this point. But just so you know that this is what's happening across the people who have responded. So we have 32 responses so far. In terms of the status of spring and summer, we have 12% that are still in discussion for spring, and we have an additional 88 have moved in remote and online only. In terms of the status of fall classes, 90% are in discussion. We have at least one moving on some online, one moving planning for all online, and most likely on campus. And then one unknown. But moving most likely on campus, unknown, moving some online, and we're still waiting to, no one so far has moving all of them online, but there's a lot going into discussion. In terms of the roles, we have senior institutional, we have, one dean or department leader. We have educators, faculty and instructors, teaching center leaders, educational developers. We also have team leads and others that are involved. So learning strategists, and just looking through the list. We also have educational technology support. In terms of location, we have Yukon, Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, and it reloads when somebody adds in, so pardon me. Ontario, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Alberta, BC, and Qatar. So thank you everybody for joining us from across the country. As you come in, please fill in the Google form. Yes, it's coming up quite a few times because we do have new people joining, and so they only see what they see in the chat. So I wanted to do a quick overview and then we'll do the introductions of our individuals. Erica, are you going to introduce our wonderful guests or shall I?
Please introduce them, Carolyn.
All right. It's a great honor to bring to everyone today two individuals that I know are both nationally recognized for their work in leadership and education development, and also two individuals who are ones that have been working already in the area of wellness and well-being, particularly in education development and organizations. So we're very much gifted to have their presence today, to have today's conversation. So I'd like to introduce to you our two speakers. It's Klodiana Kolomitro, who's at Queen's University, and Natasha Kenny, who is at the University of Calgary. And please feel free to introduce any more details about yourself that you'd like to share. So thank you again, and the floor is yours. And if you have any tech support, I'll be in the wings.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. It's Klodiana. I will be sharing my screen
Yeah,
with
we can
you
see
all. It's working?
It is working.
Excellent, excellent. Welcome, everyone. We're so pleased to see you all here. I see many familiar faces and names here. Hope you're all keeping well in times like this, and I'm looking forward to the next hour as you engage with us in a conversation about wellness and how are you keeping well and what can we do as a community to encourage wellness in a sustained pandemic. And I'm excited that my colleague, Dr. Natasha Kenny, is here as well and will be co-facilitating and moving forward with this discussion.
Thanks, Klodiana. Hi, everyone. I'm Natasha Kenny. I'm Senior Director of the Taylor Institute for Teaching and Learning at the University of Calgary. Also super passionate about this topic. Just wanted to note that we also collaborate on this work with Suzanne Sheffield, who's the director at the CLT or the Center for Teaching and Learning at Dalhousie. So just wanted to acknowledge her awesome friendship and partnership in this work.
And sorry, I didn't fully introduce myself. I'm Klodiana, for those who don't know me, and I'm the Director of Education Development in our Faculty of Health Sciences and Office of Professional Development Education Scholarship at Queen's University.
Awesome. So Klodiana, can I just get you to forward the slides?
Yep, absolutely.
Amazing. So to get us started, what we thought we'd do is actually just do an initial pulse check. And what we would like you to do is go into the chat and think about how you're doing right now. This is an initial pulse check. Would you say you're green? Are you adjusting well to COVID-19? Things are going smoothly. I got lots of bandwidth to help others out. Are you amber? Are you on the verge of going red? Are frustrations, confusions, and anxiety starting to mount? Are you red? Are you completely overwhelmed, frustrated, and confused? Yeah, flashes of amber, I like that. We do this with our team regularly and we get lots of grambers too. So feel free to be a little bit creative there. Yeah,
Greenish
absolutely.
That's a good one. Greenish amber.
Yeah. So lots of greens, some grambers, a few reds. Just want to highlight that we do this regularly right now with our team, both as we meet as managers, directors, as we meet as a full center. I do this individually with my close colleague and friend, and we have codependent leader, we often say, Leslie Reed, who's our Vice Provost Teaching and Learning, just with each other. And this is really about, during times of challenge and crisis, how important it is to check in, to identify and name the emotions or states we are currently in, to take the time to reflect on that, to normalize those emotions, because I can tell you right now, I've been green, amber, and red at certain points over the last 3 weeks. And it's been really important for me to normalize that within the context of with my team and other leaders, that you are gonna face ebbs and flows as we respond to this crisis. Also to create a sense of belonging, so to know that we're all there to support each other. And also, I will say, to act. So this is really important, just to be able to identify, wow, I'm moving amber into red, or even I'm in amber. What does that mean for my own self-care? So what am I going to do for myself to acknowledge that this is getting to be a hard time for me? Do I need to be engaging in additional self-care activities? Is it just a matter of acknowledging that I am in amber, and that's okay, because I should be in amber right now? I've been asked to pull together a whole teaching continuity site in 48 hours. It's also important for me as a leader to recognize that in others. So if I'm noticing somebody's in that amber or red zone, for me to check in and loop in either during or after a meeting with that particular individual to say, hey, is there anything I can do to support? And more I'm starting to learn that when people are in that red zone, it is so hard for them to really identify how people can help. So what I've been doing more as a leader is identifying specific strategies that I can help them with. So just really want to emphasize the importance of doing these initial pulse checks as an initial strategy that we'll highlight throughout the day. So we'll go meta throughout this day. But now, go ahead, Klodiana.
No, I was just going to say, some of you might feel like me, where I've had times when I've been in all 3 zones within an hour, because things are changing by the minute. So I felt I was in the green, amber, and red all within that hour. So how can we recalculate ourselves and go back to the amber and green zone?
Yeah. So Klodiana, if I can get you to advance the slides again. We'd now like to delve a little bit into the why. So to really start to vocalize kind of what are some of the challenges and pressures that we're facing in response to COVID-19, and what are some of the successes and opportunities? So there's a link to the doc on the slide, but there's also a link in the chat room. What I'd invite people to do is just go to that Google Doc. I'll also share it. Klodiana, I think I can share my screen or the Google Doc on the screen so people who can't access it can see. But if you go to your browser, you can freely add your responses to these 2 questions.
Do you want me to share it, or do you want to share it?
Oh, that would be great, Carolyn, if you could share it.
Thank you, Carolyn.
Yeah. So seeing that one of the successes that our CTLs are, and for me, our institutes are being seen as leaders. We're seen as essential services on campus. Our provost yesterday shared that they couldn't imagine going through this without the Taylor Institute for Teaching and Learning. And that's really a shift on many campuses. Lack of control over
absolutely.
tasks. Unknown expectations, so that role clarity, people are being redeployed on our team to new tasks that may not directly relate to our role, but we need to get done.
And that feeling of helplessness and not knowing and not being sure how to help others, what kind of help is needed. Absolutely.
Oh, the opportunities, one of the successes, we are seeing many opportunities for collaboration and partnership. That's been one of the many successes that we've seen. Shout outs from leaders and instructors across the institution. Absolutely. Almost all faculty are getting on board now, no longer just preaching to the choir.
But also seeing from leadership and other instructors modeling self-care and highlighting wellness has been absolutely fabulous, at least in our institution, and putting that emphasis on wellness at times like this.
I think I'm seeing too that faculty are getting on board with alternative ways of assessment. And that was so important to us, because I think with not only were we online, but students all of a sudden were in different time zones. We're having bandwidth challenges. So really the notion of having a timed assessment or quiz was almost unattainable at the university. So we had to find alternative assessment strategies. Oh, unknown role. There is people acknowledging that there sometimes is a lack of communication with managers. Band-aid solutions. Things are, I don't know about you, but we're responding in the moment sometimes.
Yeah.
Shifting changes, absolutely. I think that notion of lack of control, though, we're going to see. Not sure how to help others, so feeling you want to, but not knowing how to. Yeah, upskilling to support faculty. We implemented Zoom on our campus in a 24-hour period, which was unbelievable.
And the ever-changing goals, it so resonates with me. I mean, ever-changing priorities, ever-changing demands, goals, and how do we address all those, and how can we become equipped to address all those changing demands and goals? Yeah.
Long-term planning, what is happening with budgets? Oh, I echo that. And being in, for us, the beginning of our budget year was April 1st, and we really have no idea what is happening. And as a leader, that's really hard to provide a sense of security to others. Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh, I'm so glad somebody has also mentioned, so something that might not have been coming up as much, but definitely comes up in my team is working in contexts where you've got children or partners at home that need the internet connections, that need access to computers, that are now getting homeschooled. So all of a sudden there's this expectation to do so many things, and being socially isolated from friends and colleagues who you've so depended upon.
Yeah, and just flipping and thinking about the students as well, as they have limited plans with their cell phones, with their Wi-Fi, so that limited bandwidth, it will impact some of them, their studies and their learning. So talking about the digital divide, for sure.
Just want to echo in the successes and opportunities, the community of educational developers, this open sharing that has happened. And I know it's a value that we've built over the last 30 to 40 years. I honestly think that has saved us. When I'm always able now to share with our provost or vice provost teaching and learning what's happening across the country, because we've been so connected and willing to share over our listservs. It's amazing.
I couldn't echo that enough. I've relied on some of our colleagues here, and at times where we needed more resources about certain areas like remote teaching and learning strategies, and everyone was so willing and to share and just work together. So thank you for that, for this spirit of collaboration and collegiality.
Yeah, please feel free to continue adding to this. What we would like you to do is now to think about some of these responses and what you've said as we go through some of our findings and some of the research, both related to the research we've conducted, but also what we continue to learn from other scholarship regarding responding to crisis, because there is a unique aspect here. Not only is it workplace well-being, but it's workplace well-being in times of crisis. So I'll turn the slides back on to Klodiana, recognizing that we have an hour with you all today.
And just to add, please continue adding to that document, because our goal is to actually curate the document and share that with the community, if that's helpful to you, so we can learn from each other's strategies and things that we're doing, and what are some opportunities that we're seeing. Slowly moving gears a little bit here. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the organization called Big White Wall. It's an online mental health community. It originated in the UK, and it's now in Canada as well. But I just wanted to share a data point with you all. And the CEO from Third Factor shared with us last week that they had seen about 150% increase in utilization of Big White Wall in the last week compared to the week before. So 150% utilization of mental health services. It speaks volume. I mean, it goes on to say that we're all of balance, and we've certainly lost our sense of safety. Everything around us is changing, and everything that we care about is changing. So,
Klodiana, I just want to say we cannot see any slides, so you just have to reshare them.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Thank you, Carolyn.
And I did put the link to Big White Wall in the chat if anyone's wanting to take a look.
Absolutely. Can you see now, Carolyn?
Yes, I can.
Natasha? Awesome. Thank you. So that's the organization. And again, I'm just showing this to highlight the increase in mental health services, and it certainly reflects how we're all feeling. These are times of increased stress. These are times of increased uncertainty, and certainly times of increased volume. We were doing, again, some of the things that we did before. They're still part of our portfolio and part of leading our units. But now I find the volume has increased, and how we're doing things is different. Those things can easily lead to burnout. And in our research, we actually studied burnout and well-being. So our goal for the next I guess 40 minutes, or what's left in our time together, is to share a little bit of our findings. And if we were to send out the same survey today to this community, I'm sure we will get very different results. But it's nice to frame it and put it into context in terms of what we found last year in terms of burnout and well-being. And then we'll bring back the conversation to this pandemic and this crisis, and what could that look like, or how that has changed. Just to give you a little bit of context, we used Later and Maslach definition of burnout, the index of dislocation between what people are and what they have to do. So again, this feeling of being overextended, and this feeling of being depleted of our own emotional and physical resources. And often when they describe burnout, it is as a result, or it is mainly caused when people become the shock absorbers for organizational strains. So what is happening at the organization level?
Oh no. I think we lost Klodiana.
But some of the things are anxiety, depression, poor mental health, disengagement, dissatisfaction, and the list goes on and on and on. If you'd like to read the full paper, we've put the reference here, but we're just showing this slide just to show our gratitude to EDC, again, to this community for supporting this research and supporting our work on this. So thank you all. We had three primary goals. First of all, we wanted to find out what are the primary factors that promote and at the same time that hinder workplace well-being. And again, we realized there is a fine line between what's happening in the workplace and what's happening at home, so that life to work integration rather than balance, because everything that's happening in the workplace, of course, trickles down at home. And what strategies do we actually use to cope with stress, anxiety, and burnout? Beyond that, what could be done at the different levels, at the individual, departmental, organizational level, and national level to promote well-being? What we did find, it's interesting here to see, although we've titled the slide Factors That Support Workplace Well-Being, those are the same factors that actually hinder workplace well-being. And the four there are colleagues, the direct manager or director, the institution and the senior administration, and the workplace characteristics. And in each of those four categories, we found that it is actually characteristics of these individuals and actions of these individuals. So for colleagues, the findings demonstrated that workplace well-being was really enhanced and encouraged and promoted when we worked with colleagues that were supportive, empathetic, caring, helpful, and in actions, it was workplace well-being was supported when colleagues demonstrated gratitude, showed that all hands were on deck and we're all in this together. Colleagues that really raised each other up and promoted their other individuals in the same workplace in different ways. And then same goes for directors that were competent, directors that recognized hard work, and directors that, again, showed gratitude and modeled self-care and well-being and highlighted the importance of well-being in the workplace. For senior administration, there were many comments where people said if there is no disconnect between what is being said and what is being done at the institutional level, then that enhances everyone's well-being. And when the institution shows that there is a clear set of priorities, a clear set of goals, and they actually invest resources into workplace well-being that perhaps can go beyond the quick fixes, but are integrated at all the different levels and are integrated in in our culture, in our practices, and our norms, and the way we do things. Workplace characteristics, really here we categorize together the nature of the work that we do, but also having some flexibility and autonomy in what we do. So nature of the work is really feeling that we're making a difference and we're having an impact. And especially at times like this, I think we can all agree that teaching and learning centers have really been put at the forefront and are supporting different components of teaching and learning at the institution and beyond. So we're really seeing how this could align with our feelings of being needed, and also showing that we're working on something that is meaningful.
So I think when we looked at some of the coping strategies to support workplace well-being, what people had already put into place to support their own workplace well-being, there were three main kind of categories. And I think a lot of these will resonate with us in terms of engaging in activities, physical activities, gardening. I will say I've noticed the knitting group happening, of course. So thinking about what are some of those activities that help us positively cope when we are feeling that we need to cope with our challenging emotions, or we're getting close to that sense of burnout, or even what strategies do we implement on a daily basis so we try and maintain a positive sense of well-being so we're able to flourish. So activities were definitely part of that. And I'll just share, for me, physical activity is really important, and so is going to the gym, but I'm no longer able to go to the gym. So I've had to adapt. So thinking about what are some of those apps, or can I go for a run during the day, and when is that going to fit in, given the fact that I'm on 7 or 10 Zoom meetings every day. I think too, there was also staying connected to scholarly literature and reading about how we can continue to advance our own professional and academic practice, and or engaging in other activities outside of educational development, such as other volunteer activities. Social connection was a huge part of how people coped. And I noticed that one of the challenges that was put in the Google Doc was missing those face-to-face and serendipitous conversations that you'd have with colleagues. And I'll also add with neighbors. So the importance, and I think the research also supports this, the importance of social connection and social interaction. We are social beings, so we really do thrive when we're able to connect meaningfully with family, with friends, with colleagues, with pets. But really, the foundations of educational development is about relationships, and I think we're really challenged with maintaining that sense of connection while we are working working remotely and while we are connecting virtually and in online environments. Even those day-to-day team gatherings and work gatherings. So I know, for example, one of the things the TI did last week was to think about how do we have coffee chats 3 times a week where our colleagues are invited to bring whatever beverage of choice they want to those afternoon gatherings, because they are in their own space.
Oh, sorry, Natasha. I was just going to say we've embedded something similar to our social Zoom meetings, and I'm sure other individuals here on the call are trying different things to stay connected and replicate some of those joyful activities that we used to do. How do we replace those in a virtual environment?
And the other thing I really want to normalize, and I try and normalize with my staff, is that help-seeking behavior. So letting or especially those staff that are facing incredible challenges where partners might be losing their employment, where they are at home with children, where you're really noticing they are struggling, to really normalize the fact that we have an EFAP program and people can reach out to that professional support. I think normalizing and ensuring people have access to those supports and ready access to those supports is really important. And I know many of our staff and I individually have reached out to those supports over the last 6 months to help me cope with some of the challenges I've been facing. In terms of the suggestions that people had to further promote workplace well-being, there were 3 core themes that emerged in our research, and I'm seeing these as really important right now too. The first was supportive administrative and institutional practice. So having that flat organizational structure where people feel that they have the flexibility and autonomy to make the decisions they need to make in order to advance their work, in order to help us support the academic community. So I know I call it the Hollywood squares of the TI now. Even Zoom, I think, has flattened the organizational structure. Also improved communication. This is really hard when we're working remotely, when decisions are made institutionally very quickly and or by provincial governments that affect our work on a daily basis. That managing workloads. So right now we're seeing many ebbs and flows across teams. For example, right now our experiential learning team is facing incredible stresses in helping people think about practicums, internships, and lab-based experiences especially over the spring and summer semesters. The other thing is modeling positive behaviors yourself. So I think we need to be very aware of the everyday conversations that we have and our actions and behaviors and how much people notice those. So how are you modeling well-being yourself? Are you taking breaks? Are you sending emails at 2 o'clock in the morning? What is that saying to other people? Right now, effective leadership and management. I think the biggest thing here that I want to step on is clear roles and responsibilities. And again, people feeling that sense of autonomy and flexibility. So more and more that's needed, especially when people have their children at home and might not be able to work the typical 8:30 to 4:30 or 9 to 5 schedule. And the last part is attention to wellness. So I think, Denise, you were sharing how the principal at Queen's is sending messages about well-being as a whole. And that's a really good example that we are in a time of crisis and we do need to be having conversations about wellness in the workplace. These have real personal, they have real economic impacts. They have individual impacts and collective impacts. And we need to be having more of these conversations and really committing to building strong workplace cultures that promote well-being. But this is great. What about well-being in the context of COVID-19? So now we not only have really challenges in overall workplace well-being in our daily practice as it was 3 months ago, but now we load a pandemic on top of that. We're all scared. We are all faced by the realities of physical distancing. So what does the research say about managing in times of crisis? And Klodiana, maybe I'll let you lead this slide because I've been talking for a bit.
So what we did here, and I'm sure we could add to this list, but we've pulled out some of the strategies that we've seen in the literature, some of the strategies that we've tried to model ourselves in our own practices. And I've been just following a little bit as you're chatting, Natasha, and facilitating what the conversation that was happening in the discussion forum here. And there's so many things that people are doing as well. Somebody mentioned having theme days, like a crazy hair day, or wear your be a superhero day. So different things that people are doing. What the research has shown in terms of well-being during times of crisis is trying to embed some of the following practices. And the very first one on that list is reducing unnecessary demands. And what really trying to sort of scope out our practice and our jobs and our roles. And because that volume has increased and because we're doing things differently, are there certain demands in our work practices that perhaps could be either postponed or maybe completely removed from that list? So what are those unnecessary demands? And Natasha, you were sharing that example with me of perhaps looking at all the reviews that we're being asked to do, and maybe we can graciously ask for a delay in agreeing when we do those reviews. So as opposed to responding within a 3-week time frame, maybe we delay those reviews and ask kindly for more time for those. So what are those demands that are a bit more flexible? And we can postpone. Name your emotions. And the first exercise that Natasha walked you through was exactly that. How can we actually explicitly say, how are we feeling? How are we feeling? And having those emotional check-ins with ourselves, first of all, and naming them, but also with our colleagues, also with our staff, and really saying it for what it is. It's okay to be sad. It's okay to not to fulfill some of the outcomes. I mean, that doesn't mean that we're failing. This is how we're feeling, and we should be transparent about that and normalize those feelings. Embracing self-care and compassion, and it's interesting and almost a paradox how this is the first thing that we might have the tendency to let go, our own self-care. So in trying to fit in other things and trying to be on the go and responding to the crisis, the one thing that we might be inclined to let go is our own self-care. So again, thinking deep and hard in terms of how are we promoting our own self-care. And for me personally, it's again, trying to replace some of the activities that brought me joy before this. And those would be things like waking up at 5 a.m. in the morning to go to my boot camp. So how do I still put the alarm on and I wake up that early in the morning just so I have that feeling of normalcy. And again, it's for me, it's moving from that state of helplessness to self-efficacy. How can I increase self-efficacy, and how can I increase the feeling that I have control over some things? Be aware of the stories that we're telling ourselves that really shape our behavior. They can shape our mental health, and not just the stories, but also the language that we use. Often, when we talk to our colleagues or to our students, we find ourselves feeling like this sustained pandemic will never end. So I think reframing that in a more positive language and saying, next time we meet face to face, or when I see you in class, then we can do this. Again, using that positive language and reframing the conversation and reframing the stories. This is a big one. Let go if you can't control. And it came up in the Google Docs as well. How can we let go of some of the things that are beyond our control? And things like I can't control other people's attitude, but I can control my own attitude and my own feeling of optimism. And again, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying let's be a Pollyanna and thinking that everything is fine and dandy, but what are things within me that I can do, and trying to increase those feelings of self-control and self-efficacy. Reaching out to networks and leveraging collaborations. I think, and Natasha, you spoke a little bit about this, and this is exactly what we're seeing in this webinar as well. And this is what we've been seeing throughout, that sharing of resources, that sharing of feelings, that we can all, this will not last forever, and this too shall pass. Asking for help and helping others to do the same. I found this has been quite impactful in my practice. That simple reaching out to certain individuals and asking, how can I help you? I've done that with all the directors of our schools here in the Faculty of Health Sciences. As soon as this started, I sent a quick email and I called some people and said, how can I help you? Please tell me concrete things that you'd like me to be engaged in to help. So what does that help look like? And some people won't know, but that's okay. I think reaching out and opening that conversation, I found it quite useful because people have responded. Yeah, Natasha, other things that...
No, yeah, I just wanted to emphasize here because I've learned a lot from, so we currently have a postdoc scholar, her name's Gloria Ovi, in mental health and well-being in a post-secondary context. And her research, she did research on leading through times of crisis with leaders across the University of Calgary and in Alberta, specifically as leaders responded to three crises: the Brentwood murders that happened in Calgary in 2014, the flood that happened in 2013, and then of course the Fort McMurray fires, which I think happened in 2017. And two key findings that have really stood out for me that have made me pay attention as a leader is that self-care is the first thing to go for people in a time of crisis. And her research showed that those that did not have appropriate self-care strategies actually were at a high risk of suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder. So that is really critical. It's really critical for us to note that we are in a pandemic and we are in a crisis here. The second finding that she had is that people's one of the greatest successes that people had and one of their best coping strategies was developing those strong networks, those strong partnerships, and those strong collaborations. So what my recommendation to you all, if you take anything out of this webinar, is think about your self-care plan and think about that network. Who are your network, both in the context of your personal life and in your professional life? So who are two individuals you can link through, whether within your center or within the EDC community, to help build that sense of resilience, to help get us through this, because we are definitely in an extraordinary and unprecedented time. And we can't overlook that right now.
It's something that has helped me personally when I reached out to those networks is actually identifying people and explicitly having a conversation with them that is not related to COVID-19. So having those conversations as well that are, again, not related to the pandemic has helped me personally. Other strategies, I'm sure people have lots of good ideas in the chat forum. I apologize that I'm not able to simultaneously see at some of the conversations there, but the session will be recorded and I look forward to go back and read what others have said here. So this is the point in time where you will have a chance to actually share with one another what can we do to support ourselves? So again, going back to what Natasha was saying and the findings of the postdoc student at the University of Calgary, so that self-care plan. So what can we do ourselves to support each other in this time of crisis? And what can we do to support others? So ourselves and then others in these times of crisis. What we plan to do here, and I can't see what time it is, but
5 minutes to do.
Oh, okay, 5 minutes, thank you. What we plan to do is have a quick breakout room session, and we will resume in 5 minutes. And if you only get through the first question, that's fine too, or you can start with the second question, whichever it's easiest to you. Carolyn, could I ask for your help, please, for the breakout sessions?
Yeah, so Jay is going to send us everybody into a breakout session. Just a reminder that you are going to be basically teleported into a new space. You'll get a little notice. We'll ask you to join the breakout room. Please click join. And then when you click join, you'll be able to go in and join the conversation in that room. And whoever's facilitating will be in that space as well.
Thank you. So I realize that 5 minutes is nearly not enough to have a conversation on this. Although we did, at least in my breakout session. Oh, there. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Thank you. I hadn't done that in a while, muted myself. I was just saying how 5 minutes is nearly not enough to have a conversation on this. But please identify those key people in your network to continue this conversation. I've heard some really good strategies that people are already using. How about you, Natasha?
Yeah, it was, I think, a great breakout session for us, just thinking about strategies too, especially for self. There's so much that's beyond our control right now. I always talk about our zone of control and our what's inside the circle and what's outside the circle, or what's above and below the line. And it's so important to come back to, especially when we're facing so much news of things we can't. So I always go back to sometimes, what can I do? Sometimes the first thing I say is wash my hands really well right now, because that is in my control. And honestly, taking care of myself, taking care to walk away from the computer once or twice a day, and just reminding others to do that. Reminding myself that people are, they do notice, they're looking to you. We're looking to each other to really see how we can cope through this together.
Yeah.
And one thing that maybe hasn't been mentioned too is also recognizing the extraordinary work that so many among us are doing and making that public. So we talked about our senior administration acknowledging it, but I think we can do that as a community, both within the context of our listserv, but within the context of our local networks as well. So what we'd like to do to conclude the session here is just think about one commitment that you can make after today's session, either something you learned or something you reflected on about how you can support yourself and or others during this time of crisis. Thinking about this within the context of workplace well-being. What can you do to support yourself and others? And we'd like to give you a minute or two to think about that individually. And for those of you who are so bold, we would love for you to share those strategies in the chat, because what we can do is we can save the chat after, and we can share some of these strategies back in that Google Doc so that others can learn from you.
Great. Thank you, Natasha and Klodiana. Are there any questions for them, either via chat or unmute yourself? This has been absolutely fantastic and always lovely to connect with people.
So we're seeing journaling, listening to music, building breaks, modeling self-care. Yeah, it's hard.
Absolutely.
I agree. My commitment goes to those kudos too. I need to do a better job of recognizing my team, I think, right now.
And connecting with family, that came up in our breakout session as well. Taking action every time we feel anxious or worried. And thank you. I think it was Mary who mentioned that, calling my mom if I'm worried, or connecting with our loved ones.
Yeah,
No,
we'll share the slides too with everyone with all of the references, and
absolutely.
please feel free to share, use, and adapt as you see fit.
Lauren, you're multitasking. I love it. Listening to an audiobook while doing chores and other things around the house. Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Oh, the eating well. Oh my goodness. I was so addicted to Doritos the first week. That was my afternoon snack. I think so important. Yeah.
And I think what I'm trying to work on, it's not just the eating well, but also not eating 3 hours before I go to bed. That's where I'm finding really hard.
One of the things I'm valuing is actually when I get the glimpse to see people's faces, I actually find that, oh, I should put my face on, that seeing someone's face just, it drops my anxiety because I have a better sense if they're okay. And so every once in a while, remembering to connect and see a face is actually really important for me. And I'm going to try to keep that.
So important, Erica, because remember our first finding of what actually supports or hinders well-being are colleagues. So one of the best things we can do right now is be compassionate and kind to others and link back to those who are closest to us.
Yeah, that's so true. Denise, do we have time for a question or two?
You have about 3 more minutes, so absolutely.
Okay.
Chat a question or unmute yourself, and I mean, this has been
sure.
fantastic. Thank you.
For sure. Keeping a diary of daily events. I love that one. I've asked my girls to start a gratitude journal, and they try and populate it every night before they go to sleep. Absolutely. Yeah.
One of the things, and I don't think 2 minutes you can answer this, but one of the things I've been struggling with is the balance between some of the tension. So to be clear about roles decreases anxiety, but to give autonomy and flexibility decreases anxiety. And those two things seem like they might muddy each other. And as we head more into remote work, I think that has the chance of increasing muddiness because the quick check-ins to make sure everything's okay disappear a little bit. Anyway, I don't have an answer, but it's something that I'm playing with and wouldn't mind ideas if other people have them.
And that was really a comment, Erica, right? Not a question, because I agree with all you said.
If someone has an answer, I would consider it a serious question.
Yeah, I think it's always challenging. I gotta say, as a leader too, right now, people are looking for a little bit more of the command and control leadership. So sometimes it's just identifying clearly tasks that need to be done. And then when people need to get it done, not micromanaging the quality or whatever, trusting that people will get done in a way that best reflects the values of the center.
And Erica, I saw a comment here before that everyone will experience this differently. And this is what I'm finding as well, even within my team here at Queen's. So reaching out and seeing how people are coping actually is helping me and informing me in terms of strategizing and dividing the work and also sharing some of those goals.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Well, we are at time, and so I want to just thank both of you for doing this. This has been phenomenal. If people have ideas for future webinars, please let us know. But thank you so much, and we will be posting this online, as well as thank you for your PowerPoint offer and all the notes. So any last words before we bid adieu?
My thanks to Klodiana and Natasha for all their work. Thank you, guys.
And thank you very much. And I just wanted to also let you know if there's any center leaders in the group, you would have received an invitation to a center leaders meeting. And if you did not, please email either Erica or edc_communications@stelici.ca for center leaders. And also we will be having our Francophone discussion coming up as well. And that's on April 20th. So please take a look for that as well.
As well as one next week. Every week, yes. You'll find a webinar on a different topic. So, great, thanks. Natasha, Klodiana, anything left that you want to say?
Thanks for giving us this opportunity to connect.
Thank you for the opportunity. Keep well, everyone. Take care of yourselves and your loved ones.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. See you later.